My daughter said, "The house belongs to us now." She said it while standing in my kitchen, holding a folder of documents my late wife had kept in the study. I looked at her. Then I looked at the folder. And I said nothing. Because there was one thing Melissa didn't know. 3 days earlier, I had changed something that would make her words meaningless. But before I tell you what I changed, let me ask you something. If your own child stood in your home and told you that the house belonged to them, would you argue? Would you demand an explanation? Or would you stay quiet and wait for them to reveal how much they really knew? Tell me in the comments. Because what happened to me taught me that sometimes the person shouting the loudest is the person who understands the least. My name is Robert Hayes. I'm 72 years old. And for 41 years, I lived in the same house with the same woman. My wife, Elena. The house was not impressive. At least, not by the standards of people who measure a home by square footage. It was a 2-story brick house on a quiet street. 3 bedrooms. 1 small office. A narrow backyard where Elena grew tomatoes every summer. A porch that creaked whenever somebody stepped on the 3rd board from the stairs. We bought it when we were 31. At the time, it felt enormous. We had 1 child. Melissa was 4. I still remember carrying her through the front door on moving day. She was holding a stuffed rabbit and complaining that her bedroom was too far from ours. Elena laughed. She told her, "You'll love having your own room." Melissa eventually did. She grew up in that house. Her first steps happened there. Her first fever happened there. Her high school graduation photographs were taken on the front porch. When she married Daniel, we hosted the reception in the backyard. So when people asked me what the house was worth, I never knew how to answer. To a realtor, it was property. To a bank, it was collateral. To Melissa, apparently, it was an inheritance. To me, it was 41 years of ordinary life. Every scratch on the kitchen table had a story. Every room had a memory. And Elena had made sure I never forgot that. After she died, the house became painfully quiet. Elena had been sick for almost a year. The final months were difficult. I won't describe every detail. Some memories deserve to stay private. But I will tell you this. The night before she died, she asked me to promise something. We were sitting beside the bedroom window. Rain was tapping against the glass. She was tired, but her eyes were clear. "Robert," she said, "I'm here. Don't let Melissa rush you." I smiled. "Rush me about what?" She looked away. "The house." I laughed softly. "It's just a house." Elena didn't laugh. "No," she said. "It isn't." That was the last serious conversation we ever had. The next morning, she was gone. For weeks afterward, Melissa came over almost every day. At first, I was grateful. She brought groceries. She made coffee. She helped answer messages. She sat with me in the living room when the silence became too much. I thought I was lucky. I thought my daughter was taking care of her father. Then things started changing. Small things. Easy things to ignore. One afternoon, Melissa asked me whether I planned to stay in the house. I said yes. She nodded. Then she asked how long. I looked at her. "I'm 72, Melissa. I don't have an expiration date." She laughed. "Dad, that's not what I meant." But she didn't explain. A few days later, she asked about the mortgage. I told her the house had been paid off for years. She looked surprised. Then she asked how much money I had in savings. That question bothered me, not because children shouldn't care about their parents, but because she hadn't asked how I was sleeping. She hadn't asked whether I was eating. She asked about money. I told myself I was imagining things. Grief makes people suspicious. At least that's what I thought. Then Daniel started coming with her. Daniel had always been polite to me. Polite but distant. He liked expensive watches. He talked constantly about investments. He had started a construction company that had grown quickly and then struggled just as quickly. Elena never trusted him with money. I used to think she was being overly cautious. After she died, I began to understand why. One Saturday morning, Daniel walked around my house taking photographs. I asked what he was doing. Just documenting the condition of the property. Why? For insurance. He smiled. I didn't believe him. But I didn't challenge him. 2 weeks later, Melissa brought a realtor. She said they were only looking. I asked why. She said, "Dad, you don't need this much space." I looked around the kitchen. This is the same amount of space I've needed for 41 years. She sighed. "You're being difficult." That word stayed with me. Difficult. I had spent 41 years providing for my family. Now, because I didn't want to sell my house, I was difficult. I didn't argue. I simply told the realtor I wasn't selling. The realtor left. Melissa stayed. She looked angry, but she didn't say anything. The next morning, I found a yellow envelope underneath the front door. There was no stamp, no name. Inside was a photocopy of a document. It was a property appraisal. The house had been valued at $1.4 million. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. I had known the house was valuable. I hadn't realized how valuable. And suddenly, several conversations made sense. The realtor, the photographs, the questions about my savings, the questions about whether I planned to stay. Melissa wasn't thinking about my future. She was thinking about the house. That evening, I called my old friend, Samuel Whitman. Samuel had been my accountant for 26 years. I asked him one question. "Sam, what would happen if someone tried to sell my house without my permission?" He paused. "Why are you asking? Just answer me." He explained the legal protections. Then he asked, "Robert, is somebody pressuring you?" I said, "Yes." He became quiet. Then he said, "Come see me tomorrow." I went. Samuel listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back. "You said Elena told you not to let Melissa rush you." "Yes." "Did she ever explain why?" "No." Samuel opened a drawer. He removed a sealed envelope. I recognized Elena's handwriting immediately. My name was written across the front. I stared at it. "Where did you get that?" "Your wife gave it to me 8 months before she died." My heart started beating faster. "What does it say?" Samuel pushed it toward me. "It's yours." I opened it. Inside was a single sheet. "Robert, if Melissa begins talking about selling the house after I'm gone, don't fight with her. Don't accuse her. Don't tell her what I've arranged. Just make one change. Make sure the house cannot be sold without your written consent, even if someone believes they have authority over your affairs." I read the sentence again. Then again. At the bottom, Elena had written, "You will know when the time comes." I looked at Samuel. What did she arrange? He shook his head. She told me not to tell you unless you came to me after she died. Why? Because she wanted you to see what happened without interference. I hated hearing that, but I understood it. Elena had always believed people revealed themselves when they thought nobody was watching. Samuel explained that Elena had created a legal structure around the house. She had transferred certain ownership interests into a protected family trust. I was still the person living there. I still controlled my residence. But nobody could simply walk in with paperwork and sell it. There was another condition. If anyone attempted to force a sale while I was alive, the trust would automatically block the transaction until an independent review was completed. I stared at him. How long has this existed? 8 months. Melissa knows. No. That was the thing I had changed. 3 days earlier, I had completed the final step Elena had asked me to make. I had signed the updated documents. The house was protected, and nobody in my family knew. I went home that afternoon feeling strangely calm. For the first time since Elena died, I wasn't afraid of losing the place she had built with me. But I still didn't understand why she had been so worried about Melissa. I didn't have to wait long. The following Monday, Melissa arrived at 9 in the morning. She didn't knock. She used the key I had given her years ago. She walked into the kitchen with Daniel behind her. Neither of them smiled. Melissa placed a folder on the table. "Dad, we need to talk." I poured myself coffee. "Okay." She sat down. Daniel remained standing. Melissa opened the folder. "These are the documents for the house." I looked at them. "What documents?" "The ownership transfer." I looked at her. "What ownership transfer?" She sighed. "Dad, please don't make this harder." I said nothing. She pushed the first page toward me. "I've already spoken to the realtor." I stared at her. Then she said the sentence that brought everything together. "The house belongs to us now." I looked at Daniel. Then at Melissa. I asked, "Who told you that?" She frowned. "Mom's paperwork." "What paperwork?" "The will." My stomach tightened. "What will?" She looked almost offended. "Dad, you know Mom left everything to me." I didn't answer. She continued. "The house is part of the estate." I asked, "And what exactly did she leave me?" Melissa looked away. "You have your pension." I stared at her. She said, "You'll be taken care of." Those 4 words hurt. Not because they were cruel, because they were rehearsed. Someone had told her how to speak to me. Daniel finally sat down. "Robert, this is the sensible thing." I looked at him. Sensible for whom? He didn't answer. Melissa leaned forward. "Dad, you are 72. I smiled. I noticed. "You can't maintain this place forever." "Maybe not." "Then why fight us?" "I haven't fought anyone." She looked confused. "Then sign the papers." I picked them up. I read the first page. Then the second. Then the third. They were asking me to transfer the house into a company controlled by Daniel. I put the papers down. "No." Melissa's face changed. "What?" "No." She stood. "Dad, you don't understand." I looked at her. "I understand exactly what you're asking. You're being stubborn. I've been called worse." Daniel stepped forward. "This is your daughter's future." I said, No, this is my home. Melissa's voice became louder. The house belongs to us now. I remained seated. I didn't shout. I didn't threaten her. I simply said, "No, Melissa. It doesn't." She stared at me. "How do you know?" I smiled. "Because your mother made sure of it." Silence. Daniel looked at Melissa. Melissa looked at me. "What does that mean?" I didn't answer. I stood up. Then I walked to the study. I opened Alina's old desk. I removed a folder, and I placed it on the kitchen table. Melissa stared at it. "What is that?" I said. "Something your mother left behind." She opened it. The first page contained the trust documents. Her face became pale. She read faster. Then she stopped. "This isn't real." "It is." "Dad, Mom never told me about this." "No." "Why?" I looked at her. "That's something you should ask yourself." She started crying, but I didn't immediately comfort her, because for the first time, I needed her to sit with the consequences of her choices. Daniel grabbed the papers. He scanned them. Then he said, "This doesn't change anything." I looked at him. "It changes everything." He tried to argue. I told him Samuel's office had already notified the title company. The attempted transfer had been blocked. The realtor had been informed. The bank had been notified. And the trust required independent review before any future sale could even be considered. Daniel went quiet. Melissa whispered, "Dad, why would Mom do this?" I said, "Because she knew something I didn't want to believe." "What?" "That you might stop seeing this as my home." Melissa cried harder. She thought I would steal it. "No." I paused. "She thought you might convince yourself that taking it was the same thing as inheriting it." That sentence broke something in her. She sat down. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Then Melissa said, "Daniel told me you were going to sell it." I looked at him. He said nothing. Melissa continued, "He told me you had already signed papers." I asked, "Did you verify that?" "No." "Why not?" She covered her face. I trusted him. I looked at her. "Did you ever think about what Mom wanted?" She cried. "Yes." "Then why didn't you ask me?" "I was afraid." "Of what?" "That you'd choose the house over me." I looked at her. "Melissa, your mother didn't teach me to choose between you and the house." "Then what did she teach you?" I smiled. "She taught me that love doesn't require me to surrender my judgment." She looked down. I could see that she finally understood. The house wasn't the victory. The house was simply the place where the truth became impossible to hide. A month later, Daniel moved out. His company entered bankruptcy proceedings. Melissa separated herself from the business. She found work with a local nonprofit. She began paying back what she could. Not because I demanded it, because she wanted to. It took time. Trust always does. I kept the house, but I made one change. I painted the kitchen. Alina had chosen a pale green. Melissa hated it. She used to say it looked like a hospital. I kept it for years because Alina loved it. After everything happened, I finally changed it. Not because I wanted to erase Alina. Because I realized something. A home isn't a museum. It's supposed to keep living. I kept the blue mug. I kept Alina's chair. I kept her books. But I also opened the windows. I planted new flowers. And one Sunday afternoon, Melissa came over with groceries. She stood in the doorway. "Can I come in?" I smiled. "You don't need permission." She looked at me. "Yes, I do." That sentence told me she had changed. She no longer assumed access. She understood that trust is something you receive, not something you're automatically entitled to. We ate dinner at the same kitchen table where she had once told me the house belonged to her. Afterward, she asked, "Dad, are you ever going to forgive me?" I looked at her. I already started. She smiled through tears. "Is that enough?" "For tonight." She laughed. And for the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel empty. It felt alive. Alina had been right. The house was never just a house. It was a test, not of who would inherit it, of who would respect the person living inside it. My daughter had once walked into my kitchen believing she had already won. She had papers. She had confidence. She had a plan. But she didn't have the one thing that mattered: the truth. And I had learned something that I wish I had understood much earlier in life. You don't always have to fight when someone comes against you. Sometimes you need to listen. Sometimes you need to wait. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is make one quiet decision before anyone realizes you have made it. That was what Alina gave me. Not revenge. Not wealth. Not even protection. She gave me time. Time to see the truth. Time to decide. And time to let my daughter choose what kind of person she wanted to become. So let me ask you something. If your own child told you, "The house belongs to us now," what would you do? Would you confront them immediately? Would you call a lawyer? Or would you stay calm and find out what they already knew? Tell me in the comments, because there may be someone listening right now who has experienced something similar. Maybe it wasn't a house. Maybe it was money. Maybe it was a family business. Maybe it was something as simple as a room full of your late spouse's belongings. But the feeling is the same. Someone you trusted begins treating your life like something they are entitled to. And that's when you have to remember something. Being calm doesn't mean being weak. Being patient doesn't mean being foolish. And forgiving someone doesn't mean giving them permission to hurt you again. Sometimes wisdom is simply knowing when to stop explaining yourself. I stopped explaining myself that day. I didn't shout at Melissa. I didn't humiliate Daniel. I didn't threaten anyone. I simply opened a folder and let the truth speak. If this story touched you, please take a moment to like the video. And if you enjoy emotional family stories about betrayal, forgiveness, aging, relationships, and the quiet strength that comes with experience, subscribe for more. And before you leave, tell me where you're listening from. I always find it remarkable how these stories reach people in different places, at different times, while they're living through completely different lives. Maybe you're listening from your kitchen. Maybe you're driving. Maybe you're lying awake late at night. Wherever you are, remember this. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to take your time. And you are allowed to love your family without surrendering your boundaries. My daughter once said, "The house belongs to us now." I didn't argue, because I had already changed one thing. I had changed the assumption that she could take my future simply because she believed it belonged to her. And sometimes that's all it takes. One quiet decision. One document, one moment of courage, and the patience to let the truth arrive on its own. Elena is gone now. But every spring, when the tomatoes begin growing in the backyard, I remember her standing there with dirt on her hands, telling me that good things take time. She was talking about gardening. At least I thought she was. Now I think she was talking about everything. Trust takes time. Healing takes time. Forgiveness takes time. And sometimes, even truth takes time. But when it finally grows, you know exactly what it is. And nobody can convince you otherwise.